Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Donna Ataniano Britt and Deacon Anthony Co.
So good morning, Tabernacles with Feet. How are you this morning? Excellent. What a beautiful way to start our day together is in morning prayer. And I'm sure many of you pray morning prayer, but it's so lovely to really do it in community like this. So, Anthony, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what you're doing as a leadership team in your parish is also the same thing that we did as for a year, planning this event. So would you talk a little bit about the makeup of us and how we sort of graduated through the work?
And when we talk about this, we're really talking about organizational dynamics. You get a group of people who come together who really don't know each other, don't know how each other work. And you begin to present ideas. And what happens invariably when a group forms is that sometimes people's feelings can get hurt. They can have an idea that they can present. And a lot of people will look at them and go, oh, that's great. And in their minds they're thinking, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And the person walks out saying, hey, I just gave a great idea, and they're going to use it. And then no one ever talks about it. There's nothing more hurtful than that. It's less hurtful to say to a person, you know what, that's a good idea, but I don't really think it's going to work within the context that we're talking about. Let's push that out of the way. Also, there has to be some person in the group who has to give the final say. Okay? There are times when we've had this in our group. Okay, I'm not going to say who the person is who bangs their hand on the desk and gives the final say, but there's someone who does that, and they have to, because sometimes a lot of ideas can come up, and it just swells into a lot of work. And as someone said last night when the speakers, activity doesn't mean progress. Activity doesn't mean results. It can just suck a lot of time. So when you come together as a group, as we did, you get to learn each other's personalities, respect and share the thoughts and ideas, be honest about those things that you think are good, be honest about those things that just don't make sense at this time. Try not to take a pride of ownership, okay, in what you do. And I think that's where our group has come together. Wouldn't you say so? That was a phrase we used quite a bit. So as the ideas came to us over the year that we planned this for you, that's what we would say. Okay, no pride of ownership, but I have this idea. You know, and then we would put it on the table and talk about it. And sometimes we found ourselves talking about an idea a little too long, and you weren't kind of getting to the right place where they were like, okay, that's probably not a good idea. So let's just move that to the side, as Anthony said. And we were made up of a team that had clergy and laity, just like your teams are. Yes.
So really what we wanted to do, what'd you think of Julianne Stans and Valimar yesterday?
Yes.
They really were excellent. So if you think about what they told us, taught us, shared with us yesterday, it's about the people and not the process. You heard Julianne say, okay, don't spend 6 months writing your mission statement. You heard Valimar talk about be joyful. Be joyful Catholics. I always say there's nothing worse than a dour Catholic, right? Why would you want to come be with us? But that's what you're trying to create, and there's tremendous diversity and richness in our Catholic faith. So I love the whole idea of come and see. So we did not use the term come and see as we planned this, but we wanted to show the beauty of our church. We wanted you to come and see. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen for you over the course of this week. So our team, our leadership team, created this for you. We worked through a process, right, to try and create. You need to go do that back in your parishes. And that's no easy task, but we're in this together. So I want you to think about how you go back to your parishes and come and see. Invite the people to come and to see. So that's really the purpose of this. And we really wanted to make sure, I think Julianne emphasized it, is that this is not about doing the same thing we've always done. So let's look at all that's possible. Today you get to go to your first workshop. But let's look at where the church has been, where the church is, and where her future is. So with that, I'm going to introduce Hosfmann so you have time to hear from him. So Hosfmann Ospino is our first keynote speaker. Hosfmann is an associate professor of theology and religious education at Boston College School of Theology and Ministry. Hosfmann was also a keynote speaker at the National Convocation in July of 2017. He has a remarkable story to tell us about the church in America today and its future. You will learn a great deal from him. So you will find his full profile in the app and in the program. So at this point, please give a warm South Jersey welcome to Dr. Ospino.
Good morning. Can you hear me well? Well, what a pleasure to be with you this morning here in Atlantic City, joining you in this important process of discernment about what it means to be a missionary disciple in southern New Jersey, in this particular diocese, and in the United States of America. This morning I was just walking around the casino, and I was thinking, what a particular way to have this, or a space to have this convocation, So I was thinking that most likely on weekends we find more Catholics here than we find in our churches. And it occurred to me, I remember, as a matter of fact, the words that Pope Benedict, said several times. The new evangelization is about going to the courts of the Gentiles, to go to those places where people are, where they spend their time, where people find some meaning. It could be a casino. It could be work. It could be maybe a theater. It could be a place where people hang out, where people spend their times. The new evangelization is not about waiting. It's not about waiting for people to come to us. The new evangelization is about going out. And that's exactly what I want to share with you this morning in terms of what it means to be out, to go out at this particular time in history. I heard amazing things about yesterday's presentation, and I'm pretty sure that you are up for really good conversations, not only today, but also tomorrow as you continue to discern on this. Three questions with which I want to begin this presentation or this reflection. First, let's imagine 100 years from now. What will Catholics 100 years from now remember about us when they look back at the first decades of the 21st century? What will they say about you and me in this part of the world? What will they write about? How will historians define the historical period in which you and I live? What is going to be our legacy? If there is going to be a Catholic Church here in New Jersey, here in the Diocese of Camden, in the United States of America, what kind of church you and I are leaving to the next generation? What kind of faith communities will our children and grandchildren inherit as we continue to discern our identity as Roman Catholics? These are three questions that I posed to a group of people from all throughout the United States of America 2 years ago when we gathered in Orlando. And I'm pretty sure anybody here went to Orlando for the National Convocation? We got a few of you. So you're going to know, you already have a sense of what this conversation was. So there were more than 3,000 people gathered there from all dioceses, or most dioceses of the United States, and we were reflecting on a similar question. The gospel of joy in America. What does it mean to proclaim the good news today in America? But what I want to do is take those 3 questions that are actually condensed in a booklet, as a matter of fact, that is precisely the talk that I gave there. And I want to take those 3 questions and then imagine with yourselves, imagine with you as a community, what kind of America and what kind of church we are talking about. And I'm going to divide my presentation this morning, or my remarks, in 3 moments. We're going to look, 1, at some of the realities that have led us to where we are. We cannot speak of Catholicism tomorrow or today without acknowledging the great work of those who preceded us. We stand on the shoulders of giants, women and men of all sorts of life, priests, sisters, vowed religious men, women, deacons, parents, workers, lay leaders, catechists, evangelizers, baptized women and men who took the gospel seriously at some point. They read the gospel and they felt compelled to do something. The second part of the presentation today is going to look at some of the changes that are transforming Catholicism in the United States of America, and we will see how those changes challenge us today to be missionary disciples. And then towards the end, I will invite you into some specific commitments that I believe emerge out of the reality of a particularly diverse church. So let's begin with the first part, standing on the shoulders of giants. You and I know, and most likely you have heard, that Catholicism is not an American thing, you know? So Catholicism is an immigrant religion. Catholicism was brought into this land by immigrants, and even until today, continues to be supported, nurtured, and enriched by immigrants, and the children of immigrants, and the grandchildren of immigrants. And this is a very important piece to keep in mind. The first Catholic church, or the first Catholic missions in this country, were established by immigrants in the south and the southwest of the United States. The first masses were celebrated by Latinos. No, some people sometimes ask me, where did all the Latinos come from? And I always say, we've been here for 500 years. No, so just in any case, so we have all Hispanics, immigrants from Spain, eventually from France, celebrated the first masses in what is the U.S. territory. Some of those missions in the South, some of those missions in California. We all remember the first Hispanic saint in this country, Father Junipero Serra, Franciscan priest who established many missions in California. But we also have the missions of the Jesuits. We also have the missions of the Augustinians and many others who established communities in the South and the West. However, because the United States of America is such a young nation, very young nation, most of us seldom remember the history of Catholicism in the South and the West. We pay more attention to the history of Catholicism here in the Northeast, because this is where the first Catholics settled, particularly in the 19th and early 20th century. There were many Catholics already when the country began at the end of the 18th century, but most of the energy in terms of the history of Catholicism tends to be focused primarily on what happened in the 19th and 20th century. Let's not lose sight of the fact that prior to the arrival of the Irish, the Italians, the Germans, and the many other immigrants from Europe, particularly Western Europe, there were many other Catholics in our nation. In any case, so in the 18th century, millions of Catholics arrived from Europe. Why did they leave Europe today? I mean, Europe, if Europe is so beautiful, we all actually want to go to Europe, We want to visit France and Germany. But that's not the France and the Germany of the 19th century. There was poverty, there was hunger, there was strife, there was war, there were lack of opportunities. If you are hungry, if your life is in peril, if you don't have enough to live with dignity, what would you do? You pack and leave. And that's what millions of Catholics did in the 19th century. In the year 1800, it is estimated that there were about 200,000 Catholics in the U.S. territory. 100 years later, there were 16 million Catholics. Where did it all came from? Europe, many of them, they crossed the country. And they arrived in this nation. And they only have two things. They were poor. Most of them had nothing. Usually the people who migrate are the poor, are the ones who are struggling the most. So when they arrived in this country, they had two treasures. Treasure number one, they had their families. These people arrived here looking for something good for their families, particularly their children. The American dream was primarily defined as a better opportunity for the younger ones. And the second treasure for these people was their faith. These people had read the Gospels. These people had heard about the good news of Jesus Christ alive, and they embodied that faith. And they lived it according to their own cultural backgrounds. The Germans lived as German Catholics, the Italians as Italian Catholics, the Irish as Irish Catholics, and so forth. When they arrived in the United States, they have nothing. There are very few churches. There are almost no dioceses around here. And then these people say, if we want a future for the Catholic Church in this country, and if we want a future for our children in the faith, we must pass on that faith. We must do something. And the best way these people did it was by creating structures. And this is what I want to call structuring the joy of the gospel. We cannot simply content ourselves with the idea that I am a good Catholic and that God loves me and I love God and do nothing else. We need to do something. So these Catholics went to their bishops and said, "Bishops, we would like to have churches." And the bishop said, "I am sorry, but we are sorry, we don't have any money. We don't have any churches. However, if you want to build some churches, you're free to do so." And they did. These people, these Roman Catholics, these baptized women and men, went out and started building their churches. How did they build them? Brick by brick. I regularly tell the story about a parish in the Archdiocese of Boston that illustrates this. But it's not the only parish. Thousands of parishes were built this way. It's an Italian-American parish, St. John the Baptist in the city of Peabody. So the pastor, somebody donated a big piece of land, and they wanted to build a church. So the pastor said, "Who has $10 million to build a church?" Because that's how we build churches today, no? If we want to build a church, we identify the 3 or 4 wealthiest people. There are a few of those in here, no? So we identify them and we want them to write some checks, and then we'll build the rest. But nobody had $10 million. Raise your hand if you have $1 million. Nobody had him. Raise your hand if you had $100,000. Nobody raised their hand. Raise your hand if you had $100. Nobody had $100. Okay, the pastor said, "What about raise your hand if you can buy 1 brick every week?" And everybody raised their hand. So that's what they did. These people every week would buy, every family, sometimes every adult, would buy one brick every week. And they would bring those bricks to the lot. At some point, they had enough bricks to build a castle. And when they had all the bricks, and then eventually they got out other materials, they started building the church. But again, they did not have money for engineers or for workers. So what did they do? Who do you think started building the church? The immigrants themselves. So on Saturdays, the Italian men, these Catholic immigrants would come and they would provide the work. And what do you think that the ladies did in the meantime? They cooked, you know? And I just imagine the meatballs and the lasagnas and the pasta. We got to keep these men strong, you know? Amazing. And they took care of the kids. And they built one of the most beautiful churches that I have seen in the Boston area. That's how they build those churches. All in all, we know in a period of 150 years, Catholics in this country built more than 21,000 parishes. Imagine that, 21,000 parishes. But not only parishes, we also ended up building more than 13,000 schools. Why? Because we needed to educate our children. So we needed, and Catholic schools were built, one, to provide the best education, two, to keep the faith. And that's what they did. That's why Catholic schools were so valuable for those immigrants. All in all, they built about 13,000 plus Catholic schools. More than half of white Euro-American children who were Catholic went to Catholic schools. And I'm pretty sure that many of you, raise your hand if you went to a Catholic school. Now you are part of that generation, you see? That's exactly what Catholic schools did. They kept your faith and they gave you an advantage in life. They provided you with the best education. Some of the people, some of the heroes, we stand on the shoulders of heroes. And there are two people that I love. I recently gave a talk, a lecture at Dominican University in Chicago, and I had to learn a little bit about Father Samuel Mazzucchelli. Father Samuel Mazzucchelli was an immigrant who was born in the early part of the 19th century. When he was 22 years old, his bishop asked, "Who wants to go to America and work with the immigrants?" And he raised his hand, They put him on a boat. A few weeks later, he was in the United States of America, and he thought he was going to be working with Italian immigrants. He was wrong. He was sent to work with Native Americans right there. And working with Native Americans, he actually learned their language and he started building communities. Eventually, he came back to working with immigrants. He established a community of a religious order, the Dominican Sisters of Sinsinawa. Not only that, he also established schools and he built parishes. He learned how to build parishes. He learned how to build buildings. And that's the missionary zeal. He learned how to respond to the signs of the times, working with Native Americans, working with immigrants. How many of us are ready to learn how to build a new school or a new university or a new church? That's what they did. Mother Seton, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, another one of my heroes, who takes her resources, she brings a group of women together and she's passionate about education, particularly the education of young women. And she responds to the signs of the times. Many of this community of religious women eventually split into other groups inspired by the charism. Many Catholic schools in this country emerged out of the charism of these communities. Tens of thousands of children, if not hundreds of thousands of children, have been educated thanks to the work of the sisters inspired in St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. These are just two examples of the giants upon whom shoulders we stand. And there were many others, women, men, older, younger, bishops, lay people, married couples. These were people who were in love with Jesus, in love with the gospel, and the joy of the gospel burned in their hearts. So look at these numbers. These Catholics ended up building more than 21,000 parishes, more than 300 universities, more than 13,000 Catholic schools. There was a point in which we had more than 150,000 sisters, hospitals, more than 50,000 priests, and we could go on and on and on and on with these numbers. Who were these people? They were people like you and me who were baptized, and at some point they said, we must do something to ensure the vibrancy of Catholicism in the United States. U.S. Catholicism, in many ways, your American Catholicism, I must say, is a great example of what the American dream can be. We have accomplished a lot, and we have demonstrated that if we want, sí se puede. Yes, we can. But we cannot forget our limitations in this story, especially of those who were left behind and did not participate of that dream. We cannot forget the fact that many of our sisters and brothers who are black Catholics were, as a matter of fact, discriminated in our own churches. They were not allowed to worship with us because of the color of their skin. Yes, there is racism in the Catholic Church, and there is racism in our history, and we must own that because this is part of our history. We cannot forget the fact that many Hispanics in the south of the United States, as German, Irish, and Italian Catholics, were thriving in Texas and California. Next door Latino Catholics would go for 5, 10, 15, even 20 years without anyone saying one mass for them, and they were not welcomed in those other churches. So that's part of our history, and they were left behind. Native American Catholics, same here. The number is small and very few attention, many of them received. Asian Catholics, many of them are more recent presence. However, there was a lot of discrimination among the few Asian Catholics that we had in this country at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. The irony is, friends, that these are the groups, Hispanics, Black Catholics, Asian Catholics, Native Americans, who are transforming Catholicism today in this country. Those, ironically, are the groups that are injecting a new life in the United States of America to the Catholic Church. So now that we got this brief history, I normally teach this in about 6 months, so now you just got it in 10 minutes, So now, when we have these dynamics, so if Catholicism has stopped, growing and stopped, changing, by the middle of the 20th century, we could say, let's just settle here and stay. But many things have changed, particularly since the 1960s. I want to say a few of those. Immigration, absolutely. A lot of immigrants have come to the United States of America, particularly Hispanic migration. If you put together all the Irish that arrived in this country, we have about 5 million. If you take all the Italians, about 5 million as well. If you take all the Germans, about 4.5 million, But if you take all the Latinos who have arrived in this country, we can count about 30 million arriving in the last century, including myself. I was born in South America. So now, what we have here, we had immigration waves from Europe, and we had a migration tsunami from Latin America, Big wave, 30 million. Most of these people, Roman Catholic. When they arrive in our churches, these are the people who are asking us for masses and for services, for accompaniment in Spanish. These are the people who are bringing their children. The average age of Latinos is 29, just to give you a sense, very young population. You just can look at me to get a sample of that. So now Asians is the fastest growing group in the Catholic Church, friends, So for anyone who's complaining about Spanish, try some Vietnamese, and you will see. So Asians is the fastest growing group, and we are going to see major growth and major impact of the Asian community in this country. So yes, again, we are an immigrant church today. Cultural diversity is part of this dynamic. Let me go back to the Asian community for 1 second. The average age of Asians in the United States of America is 32. Notice these two groups. Latinos, average age 29, Asians 32. The average age of white Catholics 55. Okay? So who's having the children, friends? It is a fair question to ask. It is a fair question so we can envision the future of Catholicism and where we are going to be supporting the next generation of leaders. You are here not to retrieve the past. You are not here to preserve the present. You are here to build the future and cultivate the future of Catholicism. You see? So this diverse presence, this immigrant presence and so forth has led us to become a highly diverse church in the United States of America. We are a diverse community. We are a community, there used to be a time when white Catholics were 90% of the entire Catholic population. That has changed, and it will continue to change as we speak, By the middle of the 20th century, which is about 30 years from now, 65% of all Catholics in the United States of America will self-identify as Hispanic, just to give you a sense of how fast the population is changing. If you do not believe me, go to California, go to Texas, go to Arizona, go to Florida, and you will see how the church is changing. Go to the large cities like Chicago, New York, Brooklyn, and so forth, and those are anticipating the future of Catholicism in the United States. And I know for a fact that Camden, Philadelphia are not the exceptions. There are new and more complex, we're living in a more complex cultural matrix that is defined by pluralism. It is very difficult for us to ignore the many points of view that shape the lives of people in our day. And also, we have to contend with the complex attitudes towards religion, particularly institutional religion or organized religion. We know that the fastest growing phenomenon in the United States of America is secularism. In 1991, 3% of the U.S. population self-identified as people who did not identify with any religion. Today, that number is 25%. In 30 years, it is anticipated that number will be 50%. Okay? So the biggest challenge is not the immigrant friend. The biggest challenge is not people Catholics who speak a different language. The biggest challenge is a culture that is telling us that religion, that God are not important. And that's where we need to start bringing our energy. Defection is another challenge in terms of that is affecting us. We know for a fact that about 30 million white Catholics or white Euro-American Catholics stopped self-identifying as such in the last half a century. We know for a fact that about 14 million Hispanics who are the hope for this church in many communities, 14 million left or stopped self-identifying as Roman Catholic in the last few years. And syncretism, some people call it relativism, we can use many other words. People are not having clarity about their beliefs and feel comfortable not only believing in Jesus Christ, but adding to the mix with other traditions and sometimes creating our own gods and our own understandings of religion. That's a big challenge in which we are. And we cannot minimize, I have to say, and especially living in the Northeast, we cannot minimize the effects of scandal and the lack of evangelical zeal. Yes, scandals, particularly the abuse of children and all the dynamics that have emerged with that, has impacted us seriously, and it has affected. Our communities are wounded. Our society is wounded. And we need to own that, and we need to do something to respond to that, And also, there's the lack of evangelical zeal. Sometimes it seems like people are tired. We just got tired. We don't want to work anymore. We prefer to see our churches. I once visited a parish in the Midwest, a parish that was established by Polish Catholics. The parish was surrounded by Latinos and black people, but they didn't want to have black people and Hispanic Catholics worshiping in that parish. So the bishop told them, if you don't welcome those communities, you are going to close. And these people chose to close the church instead of opening that. And it's not the only example. There are many examples throughout the United States. As a researcher, I have encountered many of those. And it's very sad. So, this is a picture of Catholics in the United States of America in 2019. Notice this. Non-Hispanic white, about 47%. Hispanics, 43% and growing. African American, about 3.6%. Asians, about 5%. Native Americans, 1%. We are part of a very diverse church in this country. Now, look around. Look to your right and to your left. Do it right now. Do it right now. Look around. Does your parish, does your school, your organization mirror the faces and voices of that demographic map? Okay? And if that's not the case, we must do something, because we cannot ignore our future. We cannot ignore our present. So with this in mind, now, and mindful that my time is about to expire as well, no? So with this in mind, the question for us is, and this is as a professor of theology, I always ask my students, after we read the good books and get the good statistics and the good theories, we need to ask the most important question. So what? Okay? Yeah, and now what do we do with all this? Because I am not here just to bring you down or to lower the spirit and the energy. I'm here to let you know that evangelization needs to be done with the feet on the ground. We need to understand our reality, and we need to start moving in evangelization, looking at what we have, our treasures. The Second Vatican Council, the Pastoral Constitution Gaudium et Spes, reminded us that it is our obligation as Roman Catholics to read the signs of the times. We should be experts reading those signs of the times. Sometimes we use statistics and sociology, but all we have to do is use our eyes, use our heart. And at the same time, yesterday you heard it, and you're going to keep hearing it today, we need to embrace the principle of pastoral conversion. Pope Francis reminds us in Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, that pastoral conversion is the exercise of assessing, evaluating what we have and determine if it is not working, we must change the way we are doing things. We cannot just keep repeating ourselves, no? Pastoral conversion is very important. So I want to conclude with 5 prophetic commitments in this particular Catholic moment. Why a Catholic moment? Because the word Catholic means diverse, universal, all-encompassing. So this is a Catholic moment in a diverse church. And this is a Catholic moment in which you and I are called to give witness of what we believe in light of our faith in Jesus Christ. First commitment, and this is something that I've been saying in many of my presentations, it is time to return to Jesus, friends. No? It is time to return to Jesus. And that means that we must reread the Gospels. We need to read the Gospel literally. Every parish should do an exercise of reading the Gospels on a regular basis and re-encounter Jesus. Sometimes we get more caught up on identity politics. We get caught up on ideological battles. We get caught up on church documents, and we forget Jesus. We cannot do that. So that's the first prophetic commitment. Second prophetic commitment, invest in our Catholic youth. Right now, let me do an experiment. Raise your hands, those of you who are younger than 30 in this room. Ouch. Okay, friends, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. Because, if you are in your 60s, if you are in your 70s, most likely you have a short span of time to make a difference. It is true. But if we start engaging those 21s, I was 7 years old when a priest told me, "Do you want to teach catechesis?" And I said, "What is that?" And he trained me to teach 5-year-olds. That was catechesis in Colombia. Children teaching children. Young people witnessing to young people. We need to bring those who are in their teens and in their 20s. As a matter of fact, I want to challenge you. Have a convocation for Catholics who are younger than 35, That's what you need to do. Just a similar convocation for those who are under 31. Invest in your Catholic youth. Why? Because that's the future. That's the present and the future. And keep in mind that 60% of all Catholics in the United States of America under the age of 18 are Hispanic, okay? So make sure. Some people say, "I cannot work with Hispanic youth because I don't speak Spanish." Don't worry, all of them speak English, So just welcome them. Just welcome them and work with them. Number 3, welcome the immigrant church, friends. Welcome the immigrant church. It's very important. We must commit to the new voices. 25% of all Catholics in this country are immigrants. We cannot ignore the plight, the needs of our sisters and brothers in the faith. Discern with humility what the call to be in a poor church at the service of the poor is. And this is an important piece. Catholicism in the United States in the 20th century became largely a middle upper class experience. Except for some urban settings and some rural settings, most Euro-American Catholics in this country became highly educated. 55% of white Euro-American Catholics has a college degree. There are no more Catholics who are millionaires in the world than in the United States of America. No? And half of them may be sitting here. I don't know. It's just like But in any case, we are happy being a middle-class church and have the concerns of a middle-class church. That is not a problem, and we should affirm and be happy for that. But let's remember that the vast majority of Hispanic Catholics struggle with poverty. Let's remember that many black Catholics and many Asian Catholics struggle with poverty. There are many white Catholics in rural areas and urban areas who also struggle with poverty. How do we reach out to them? And we cannot forget that community. And to conclude, we must evangelize with joy as missionary disciples. Pope Francis, in the Joy of the Gospel number 24, tells us that evangelization needs to happen in 5 moments, 5 steps. Step number 1, take the first step. Don't wait for people to come. Don't wait for people to knock on the door of the rectory or your house. Go out. Go out. Pope Francis uses the word primeriar in Spanish. Primeriar means you do it first because God did it first for us. 2, get involved. We must ask people what's happening in their lives, and we have to care about their hopes, their joys, but also their sufferings and the stuff that brings them down. 3, walk with them, accompany them. Evangelization via email is not too effective, no? We have to literally walk where the people are. Join them, speak with them, listen to them. 4, be open to the Holy Spirit to yield the fruit and celebrate. Pope Francis doesn't use the word celebrar in Spanish. Pope Francis uses the word festejar. Festejar in Spanish means fiesta, festa in Italian. That's what Pope Francis is saying, that being a Roman Catholic is to be in a permanent state of fiesta because Jesus Christ is alive in our hearts. And that's what we need to do, go out and give witness. So 3 questions. What will Catholics 100 years from now will say? What will they say about us? 2, how will historians define our historical period? 3, what kind of faith communities are you and I going to inherit to our children? The answer, my friends, depends on how open we are to allow the Holy Spirit to work in our lives and in our diverse communities today. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ospino. What an amazing talk for us and giving us a lot to think about as we will head back to our parishes. Dr. Ospino also referenced we need to be the feet on the ground. So it's a very good thing that we are tabernacles with feet. So what we're going to transition to, you'll notice that Dr. Ospino and Josh are sitting over here off to the side. We're going to have a conversation with a panel in a few moments. But as we talked about yesterday, the importance of story and the importance of our own story to bring people into the church. So I think Julianne said something, I'll paraphrase her, if each one reaches one and teaches one. Part of that, we would change the church. Part of that is telling our own story. So what I would like to do now is welcome to the stage Millet LoCasale, who is from St. Katherine Drexel Parish, and she is here to share her story. So please, a warm welcome.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. Oftentimes, I tend to think that all the good things that could be said about our faith has already been said, that there's nothing I could add to the table. So truly, this is an honor for me to be here. Well, before I begin, I have a question for all of you, and you can be honest with me. Your secret is going to be safe within the 4 walls of this hall. Who here, with a show of hands, watches Hallmark movies? Can I get... There you go. I have a few people here who watches Hallmark movies with me. Well, I love Hallmark movies. Don't tell my husband that I'm telling you, but he loves Hallmark movies too. Whenever we want to relax, that is our default thing to do. We watch Hallmark shows. Nowadays, the best date we can do is watch TV, and we just make the most out of it. Well, what I love about Hallmark movies, aside from them being predictable, is that they're love stories. Whatever season it is, it's always a story about love. Granted, it's romantic love stories, but those are stories that get me excited and get my heart pitter-patter oftentimes. I love hearing all kinds of love stories. Stories among couples, between parents and children, among family members, and among friends. Well, I also like to think of myself as a walking love story of God. That I am co-writing this wonderful love story with God through my life. That this part of His, and I like to refer to God as a father, hence the male pronoun, that this part of His big love story would not be complete if my story is not added to it. In the short 30 years of my life, I'm much older than that. I stopped counting at 30. Well, God has constantly and consistently shown how deeply He loves me. More often than not, I'm oblivious to that, or I take them for granted. But one thing that has always stayed with me, though, is His gift of our Mia. Both my girls, Sarah and Mia, are wonderful expressions of God's love for me. But He gave the icing to my cake by giving us Mia. We call her Mia Grace because she is a gift and a grace from God. She is my rainbow baby. When I was pregnant with her, she was diagnosed, she tested high risk for Down syndrome. But my husband and I, from the get-go, decided that we would love this child no matter what. So further testing lowered that risk. However, her second trimester ultrasound showed that her brainstem was not within the normal range. We did further tests, and at that time, the doctors suggested that we should terminate the pregnancy. But my husband and I believe that a life is a gift from God. So we continued with the pregnancy and just hoped for the best. We scheduled a C-section for her because her older sister Sarah came in big, and we had to have an emergency C-section with her. So we wanted to remove all the complications. Well, Mia came out quickly on a Monday morning. She scared us a little bit because it took her a while to cry, but eventually she did, and then she latched on quickly and nursed. Things started turning for the worse that night when a nurse came to pick her up for observation. She wasn't breathing normally. Her legs were starting to turn purple. Apparently, she had PPHN, persistent pulmonary hypertension of the newborn, and PDA, or patent ductus arteriosus, or in English, her heart and lungs were not functioning well. They had to take her in the NICU, and for 10 days she wasn't improving, so they had to move her to CHOP. Doctors there could not understand how a full-term baby could be exhibiting symptoms usually associated with preterm babies. So genetics did a wide array test on her, and then that's when we found out about her rare chromosome disorder. We even came to a point when cardiologists discussed to us about the possibility of a heart replacement surgery for her because she just wasn't breathing on her own. One day, our dear pastor, Father John Vigneron from St. Katherine, Drexel, came to visit and bless her. Exactly 1 week to the day she was blessed, we were able to take her home. Without any medical apparatus connected to her, she was breathing on her own. I don't know how we can go from discussing heart replacement surgery to taking her home in a week. Many skeptics would probably say that there's got to be a medical explanation for this that we haven't discovered yet. Sometimes the left side of my brain tends to come back to that explanation, but in the deepest part of my heart, I believe that God's healing grace flowed through Father John's hands and to my daughter. That's why she's still here with us now. I will never fully understand God's ways because that could have gone either way. But I think Mia still has a mission. God's beautiful love story is currently unfolding with her, and she needs to share that with the rest of the world down the line. And it's the same for each and every one of you. You are all walking love stories of God. It's not a coincidence that you are here at this convocation at this exact moment hearing this story. Someone out there needs to hear your love story too. You need to joyfully and excitedly share it, both in words and especially in action. This is the joy of the gospel that Pope Francis has been talking about. This love story I have with God has not always been peaches and cream. I lost my mom to cancer a couple of years ago, and 5 years before that, my dad to acromegaly. The same year I lost my dad, I had a miscarriage. My grief almost cost me my marriage. But the amazing thing about this God that we believe in is that no matter how disappointing or dark we find ourselves in, or how big of a mess we make ourselves, He manages to make something beautiful out of these situations. He even went through suffering and death to show to us that death is not the end, but life is. And we get to witness that every day when we receive Christ in the Eucharist. God loved us so much, He knew that we need to be reminded and refreshed every time we receive Christ in the Eucharist. Because He is good like that. God is good all the time. All the time, right? In youth ministry, that's the line we used to get, to take the teens' attention back to us. And I say, God is good. You say, all the time. I say, all the time. You say, God is good. Because truly, God is good if you think about it. In our darkest moments, in the bad times, in our disappointments, in our happiness, in our victories, God is good all the time. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share a bit of God's love story through me, and I look forward to hearing yours whenever our paths cross. May God be praised.
The power of story. So it is clearly a theme for us this week, is the power of story. So Millet, thank you for that beautiful love story you shared with us. And thank you for letting us know we all are in a love story with God. So we're going to transition now to the panel discussion. So I am going to invite our other panelists to the stage. Andres Arango, Claudia Traney-Melgar, and Sister Anne Katherine, who belongs to the community of the Franciscans of the Renewal. So please welcome our panelists to the stage. Thank you. I'm so delighted. Thank you. Thanks, Andres.
So welcome, Sister Anne Katherine and Claudia and Andres. Now for this session, we're not going to be drawing on questions from the audience. All the other keynotes, we will have questions from the audience. But what we want to present is a picture of a robust dialogue among ourselves, and we should feel free to jump in as the Spirit moves, about how you all particularly, Sister Anne Katherine and Claudia and Andres, are living out those prophetic commitments in your own communities. So I'd like to get things started here by just asking you to share in a minute or two how you're seeing the kinds of commitments lived out and how you're leading the kinds of commitments that Hosfmann spoke about in his final challenge to us. And let's start with Sister Anne Katherine, who's here in Atlantic City doing ministry with the poor.
Thank you so much. Great to be here with you all. Our community's been here in Atlantic City now for a year and a half. Our charism is to live among, to serve the poor, and to do works of evangelization, twofold ministry. We have a very simple drop-in center across the street from the Boardwalk Casinos, so on Pacific Avenue at St. Nicholas of Tolentine Church, where we serve the homeless 3 days a week. Our other two sisters are there right now. That ministry, we usually have about 80 to 100 people come in for a simple breakfast with us. And I know we were talking a bit ahead of before about how does the work with the poor help to build up our own faith? How could it teach us, myself, as an Anglo-Catholic, how can it increase our walk with Jesus in serving the poor and learning from the poor? And for me personally, it's always such an powerful encounter with Jesus and the poor, Jesus in his suffering, in his brokenness. From serving them each day, I'm reminded of my own need for humility, that I don't have it all together, that I very much need God. So humility, gratefulness, the poor who we serve and throughout my 14 years now as a religious sister, their gratefulness, their ready gratefulness is such a calling on to me. And finally, their openness, they know their need for God. They know their need for God, and I learned that from them. Tonight we'll be helping to facilitate the Holy Hour, and we'll sing the song, very simple song, "Lord, I Need You." So powerful, and the poor know that. They know that they need the Lord, and I need Him just as much, and I need that too. So it's one of the ways I think reaching out to the poor, being with them, increases our walk with the Lord, brings us closer to Him.
So the church in the future, by being open and grateful and of service to the poor, draws on their strength. Yes. And their gratitude and openness is our strength as well.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Claudia.
So in our parish of St. Clair of Assisi in South Jersey, I'm part of that group, and I was just thinking as Dr. Ospino was giving the numbers, and I'm part of the 60%. I wish I was part of the 60%, the 29 around it, but unfortunately I'm not. But I'm the immigrant. I'm originally from Bolivia. I moved here when I married my husband, an American. I'm a mother of 2 bilingual kids. Tell me that it's so hard to make a kid to speak Spanish, even if he's around a lot of English speaking, but we got it, right? It's a work that is every day. And my church, my parish, played a huge role in this. When I walk into my parish, I felt that this was a place that I need to be, because I am that bridge that we building between the communities. St. Clair of Assisi Parish is part in the area of the farm areas. Although traditionally it's a lot of farmers, not everybody loves or live around the farms. And we've been working hard. Our pastor, Father Dave, and the principal of the school are really opening their arms to this wonderful community. Just let me tell you one little example of how we're doing that bridge. In our parish, we have a vibrant community composed of many immigrants, and including all the Americans that love to worship in Spanish, because our Mass is so lively every day. But that didn't start there. It was hard at the beginning when we had to only go to one Mass during the week, and we only have sometimes not even Spanish-speaking priests. And although we're bilingual, I speak both languages, but when you have something in your heart, and faith is something that you keep right in that deep part of your heart, that you need to worship in your own language. That is the contact. You learn your first prayers in your own language, and that is what keeps you attached to your roots of that big tree that you want to be. So for us, working with our pastor, working with our principal of our school, Father Dave and Sister Jerry are doing a wonderful job. I was teaching at the school, and we are supporting a program they call the Latino Enrollment Program, and we're welcoming many families. At the parish level, we're recognizing the Mass in the afternoon. It wasn't the best one for Spanish-speaking families. They were just there because traditionally they used to finish in the farm and they can just get to church at the end of the day. But families change, right? I want to go to the church at 8 or 9, and we talked to our parish, our pastor, and he said, I love to have the chance to change the Mass. I thought you guys wanted to have that Mass at that time. And the answer was, we love to see our other parishioners. You know how nice to walk into the parish and see the 8 o'clocks leaving, and now the 9 o'clocks were coming, and now when we leave, we see the 11. So that communication right there, the bridge is established, and now we work for one campus, one community, one parish. That's our slogan now. We keep saying we wanted to be one church. That's what we are. Doesn't matter what language you speak, one church. That's what we wanted to recognize. But I understand sometimes we get a heavy accent. You know, it's a little overwhelming when somebody is so excited like me and start talking and everything. Oh, she have a heavy accent. I don't know what she's saying. But I always smile, and I can say that the same thing again. So to my friends here in the audience, don't be scared if you not understand what we're saying. Don't think that all the Hispanics are just, you know, speaking Spanish only. We can try to worship next to you, hold your hand when you're suffering, be next to you, accompany you, and stay with you. We do the same thing for each other. When we have our Spanish priest,
it sounds like a parish that is strong in its diversity, but not just because of the diversity, but because of the rootedness in Christ and the joy that springs from that leads to the kinds of dialogues and discussions that are just natural. Let's turn to Andres and ways in which you and your leadership and service have expressed the kind of commitments that Dr. Ospino spoke about.
Yeah, going a little bit in the line of Hosfmann, about the statistics, from a diocesan perspective, around 25% of the Catholics in South Jersey, they are Latinos. In 23 of our 60 plus parishes, we have Hispanic ministers. It's a reality that we have in each of our parishes. We did a study like a couple of years ago, and in each parish of the diocese, we have Latinos living in that parish. And our perspective for the diocesan office for Hispanic ministry is how to outreach, how to evangelize the Latino community. And I think here are many of those people who are serving the Latino community, many of our priests, religious sisters, laymen and women that are committed to serve the Latino community. I think the most important thing for us is to identify our target group of Latinos. So many times we try to put the Latinos like in the same box, that all of us, we are the same. And it's a great diversity. We are, here Bolivia, Colombia, we are from so many different countries. I always say we Latinos are very multicultural. I live in a multicultural family. Say my wife is from Paraguay, I'm from Colombia, our friend who take care of our daughters is from Dominican Republic. My daughters, they don't know where they are from, They were born here and they don't know, I don't know what is their accent. And I think that is the reality of our parishes, very multicultural parishes, but at the same time within the Latino community. So we have here in the shore area, in the center of the diocese, more rural, in the Camden city, and I think we are always trying to identify who are the people that we need to serve in the Latino community. And I think Hosfmann mentioned that, Claudia also. I think we need to think, many people think that to do Hispanic ministry is to do ministry in Spanish. That is not right. To do Hispanic ministry, sometimes it's in Spanish, sometimes it's bilingual, and sometimes it's only in English. And I think we are trying always to form leaders, in different areas that they can serve the Latino community. One of the most important things that I want to say that is when we receive a phone call in our diocesan office, and we have some family that they just arrive here to our diocese trying to find a place where they can worship. And I want to challenge you, because in the Latino Catholic community doesn't exist the concept of boundaries for a parish. The Latino community, they are going to go wherever they feel welcome. They are going to go wherever, they feel at home. And I think that is how we are trying to serve our Latino population, but at the same time, to form leaders in the Latino community. We have a lay ministry formation program of 3 years. Hosfmann said in his presentation, children evangelizing children, youth evangelizing youth. And I think it's very important also that we can form Latinos, not just to have our, paternalistic protection, but leaders being now Latinos, serving Latinos in our diocese.
So, Hosfmann, a good question for you, and as it relates to what we've heard here, the stories we've heard here, and that is this fundamental commitment. You raised your voice. It was the first thing you said. It's return to Jesus, return to the Gospels, return to Jesus. And I'd like you to reflect, if you would, for a minute on how that in particular, as foundation, is so necessary for us, and how it leads to a church that is strong in its diversity and unity, and also how that paves a future for the church 100 years from here that the historians will hopefully write about. And then please, our panelists, jump in and illustrate as well.
Yeah, so something that, as I was listening to you, sister, in your work with the poor, and listening to the work that you are doing, Claudia and Andres, with the Latino community, it came to my mind that we should really create a new ministry in the Catholic Church, and it's the ministry of empowerment, But the ministry of empowerment that is rooted, is grounded in an encounter with Jesus Christ. That is rooted in that experience that we have met God, through Jesus Christ, and because of that encounter, we want to do something. I'll give you an example. I'm pretty sure that many of you in here are saying, I don't speak Spanish, so how do I work with the Latino community? Or I do not speak Swahili, I don't speak Portuguese or many other languages. I don't feel comfortable being in contexts that are diverse. How can I help my community? A few years ago, I was reading the research that a group of researchers were doing in the Midwest. And they were interviewing people in a parish. So in this parish, they went and interviewed people. The parish had Mass in English, mostly your American community upstairs, the Hispanic community, and some Africans celebrated downstairs. So they interviewed the people upstairs, and they asked, they first interviewed the people downstairs. They asked them, what are your biggest needs? And they said, our biggest needs is we need access to health care. We need to manage or navigate the immigration system. And we need counseling. Those were the three biggest needs. Lawyers, doctors, and attorneys, and counselors. And then they said, okay, so let's see what we can do. They went upstairs and they asked people, what are your gifts? And most of the people upstairs were saying, well, we're a bunch of lawyers, doctors and counselors who would like to help others. And then they said, and the researchers asked, have you looked at your neighbors downstairs? Have you spoken with them? And that's exactly sometimes what happens in our communities. That, as we know, we all claim to have fallen in love with Jesus Christ, and we want to help, but sometimes we fail to see the needs of the neighbor next to us, and the gifts that we have received are gifts that can empower people. I'm pretty sure that when Sister is working with the poor, it's not just feeding the poor, but it's also helping them to understand that they have a dignity, that they need, that they can be better, And it's the same with the Latino community. So most likely you already have many of the gifts that are needed for that particular empowerment, and they are grounded in that love that we have for Jesus Christ.
And can I say something on that point? And I love the example that you put out there. But remember what Andres was mentioning about how diverse even our immigrant community is. We, between us and Colombia and Bolivia, we always say, oh, we speak better Spanish than you. No, you can speak better Spanish than me. But anyway, to that point is we are from different countries. And one thing I always have to explain about myself when I meet someone is where I am from, and if it's the same as Spanish for everywhere, if I can communicate the same way with everyone. And the answer is yes, 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 yes. Like you speak English and you can talk to people in England. So it is different communities. What is the same is the language. What is different is the culture of these people that come from all different countries. And as your example, sometimes we think that because they speak Spanish and traditionally hard workers, immigrants working in farms, we all are the same. But we come with different gifts too. We have professors, we have doctors, we have veterinarians, we have many people in our immigrant community that may not be able to be working on their field. We have a parishioner in our 9 a.m. Mass, and she is a OBG, and she's a doctor, and we have an emergency in that Mass one time, and she was the first one to jump in. Half of the people that was in that place did not know she was a doctor. But thank God she was there at that particular moment. And even no one knew that she was a Latina because she had a look like she was an Afro. So everybody thought she was an African American. And just our gifts are in our house, in our home. We don't need to speak Spanish. I can tell you how welcoming we are in our Hispanic community if you even say hola or gracias. That's it. That's all you need. We will be welcoming as the same thing we would like to be part. We don't want to be welcome. We want to be part. We want you to invite every single person in your community to be part of a role specific that you can assign to them to do the job of evangelizing. They don't need to be graduated. They don't need to know everything about the Bible. They just need that hand out to say, we can work together. That's it. That's all we need.
I'd like to pick up on something that I've heard underneath the surface or perhaps directly stated, and that is this, that each one has their own gifts. And even in a Hispanic context, you've got people from different areas, and what's more important, perhaps, I'm reading between the lines here, what's more important than recognizing that a person is from a certain place is that they have their own story. That unique person has their own story. And to really know that person that you referred to a moment ago, who is misunderstood, is to know her particular story. And I wonder this, and I'd like you all to respond to this, that the more we think about one another in terms of categories, right, white or rich or Hispanic or not, and treat one another that way, the more we miss Jesus in that particular person. That point. But then also, when we encounter that person as a unique reflection of God and their whole story, then we get all the other stuff as well. We recognize them in all their contexts, all their whether they're poor or rich. But I wonder if that is a way of encountering another person, which we've heard a lot throughout this last day or so, is a way for a strong church of the future. Any response to that?
I want to mention, you mentioned the word encounter. It has been that common word. Pope Francis speaks about the culture of encounter. Mm-hmm. Here in the United States, the Conference of Catholic Bishops, they launched a couple of years ago a program called the Fifth Encuentro, the Fifth Encounter. And it's a process of how we can encounter our peoples in our communities. Mm-hmm. And how can we encounter Jesus in their faces. Yes. They have a name, they have a dignity, they have a personal relationship with Jesus. And here in our diocese, we did the process in all the Latino parishes with 4 small Christian communities, and came like 3 main priorities. You're talking about the encuentro, the encounter. And one of the main priorities is about a family life. Because one very important thing, I think, in the immigrant community, and we as Catholics, we are a family, and I think we need to be a prophetic voice about the family. To find the face of Jesus in each individual person, but also the sense of community, the sense of family. And I think that is basically not just the immigrant community, but everyone what we are looking for. We are looking to have a personal encounter with Jesus, but at the same time to have a personal encounter with our brothers and sisters, that we can see the face of Jesus in that. Yeah. And I think I'm sure you are going to see the face of Jesus in so many Latinos in our diocese, but at the same time we are seeing the face of Jesus in so many leaders that are service in our parishes here in South Jersey.
Yeah, well said, well said.
And now, and what Andres is saying, the Quinto Encuentro just happened, a few months ago, and just picture this. And that was the moment of joy for me personally, because if we are here among 600 and 700 people, in that Quinto Encuentro, the national, it was 3,500 Latinos, all together under the same room. We all are bishops. And I was dying to meet every one of them, and I was really happily surprised that most of them are bishops, speak Spanish. They are bilingual. They were there to listen to our stories. And I don't think, since I've been living in the United States, I've never been with so many Latinos in one place. I'm a minority in my own house because I have 3 Americans against me all the time, trying to be against a Latina. But that experience gave what you're experiencing right now, the joy of the gospel. You were there too, right?
Absolutely.
Sister.
Yeah, I would just add, in this idea of returning to Jesus, and that each person has a personal story, and helping them to be able to see the role that Jesus plays, helping them to articulate the role that Jesus plays in their lives. I think in a lot of our evangelization is so focused on the sacraments, seeing Jesus truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. Especially our youth ministry, we have a small little youth group that's been meeting now once a month, mostly of Hispanic teenagers, and trying to bring them into relationship with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. That if they know that he's truly present there, that he really loves them and is in relationship with them, that's what's going to keep them in the church and in the faith. But helping them then to be able to speak about Jesus, to be able to recognize that they have a story to tell and that Jesus is part of it.
So how do you do that? Teach us how to do that.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, by our own witness, as sisters, as we bring the young people in front of the Blessed Sacrament, the way our own reverence, our own devotion is displayed in front of the Blessed Sacrament, the way that we speak about our Lord is truly present when we're speaking to the young people. We speak about it constantly referring back to Jesus there on the altar with joy, with our music. The music is so important to lead them into an openness of prayer. And then leading them into silence. The need for silence in all of our lives is instrumental in our growing relationship with the Lord, but for young people especially, who've never experienced silence. We're new here to the diocese. Our ministry is just growing. I look back to, we've been in the Bronx and East Harlem now for 10 years. We've been leading the children of East Harlem in Eucharistic adoration for 10 years at the grade school that we live next to. The kids say, we have a youth group, we have pizza with them, and then we have the time of prayer. They can't wait for the time of prayer. They say they've experienced peace there. They feel loved. They feel safe. They feel happy. These are kids in the Jefferson housing projects of East Harlem who aren't finding that really anywhere else. Right. In that Catholic grade school, they're averaging about 12 kids a year asking for baptism. I don't know how common that is. I don't think.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Because these children they've come to realize that Jesus is truly present there. They want to be part. They want to receive him. It's often the second graders, but we have third, fourth, even up to 8th graders asking for baptism because they've encountered Jesus there.
So, Hosfmann, will you pick up on some of these themes that you've heard in our conversation and give us a picture of the church in 5,100 years? What would you love to see as these themes come together in a tapestry of a strong church?
Wow.
Your ideal.
My ideal. Well, I think that I would like to see a church as we move forward, a church that is in love with the many cultural traditions that constitute who we are as Catholic Church. We need to start changing our language. In the United States of America, especially among Catholics, we always talk about the church welcoming Hispanics, the church welcoming the poor, the church welcoming women, the church welcoming X or Y group. But the truth is, Hispanics are the church, the poor are the church, women are the church, you know?
Right.
So how do we change our perspective and start understanding that we are a church innately or essentially diverse? That's the first piece that we need to understand. And that diversity comes in many forms, colors, shapes, smells, and so forth. And we need to embrace that identity. And then into the future, demographically, as I said it in my presentation, there is no doubt that the church in this country is going to be largely Hispanic in terms of the numbers. The Euro-American community will continue to dwindle in terms of numbers. And we know that because of, I gave you the stats.
We're not having children.
Well, the thing is that you don't want to have a child when you're 60, or 70. I mean, if the average age of white Catholics right now is 55, so that pretty much projects us into the future, a future in which those who are having the kids are the ones who are going to populate the church. But the key is, we need to make sure that we retain Latinos and Asians and Black Catholics and immigrants from other countries who are arriving in this country, because the vocations to the ordained priesthood, religious life, deacons, lay ecclesial ministry, theology, and others need to come from these communities. We need to, as I said earlier, cultivate the ministry of empowerment. So I want a church in love with Christ, a church that is joyful, but a church that is also aware that it is a diverse body.
Good closing
Thank
word.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you want to thank? I see I'm being stopped right now. A good conversation can continue for a long time. Thanks, Ed.
And I hate to bring this conversation to an end because it's outstanding. Such great information is being shared. Thank you. It truly is a ministry of empowerment rooted in an encounter with Jesus Christ. And that's what we're called to do. I can't thank each of you enough for what you've shared with us today. Thank you so very, very much.
Thanks, Anthony, very much. Thank you.